Hello, all, and welcome to episode 262. Oh my gosh, so many episodes of the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I am joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film and sometimes their friends to dish up a little bit of movie news and review a film, either current or classic. This week is no different. We are going to be reviewing the new film, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Wow, is that a long title for a movie? Does that movie earn respect given its very long title and everything that goes along with this film, starring Frances McDormand? We'll see. We're going to talk about it. We've also got some interesting movie news tidbits to talk to you guys about this week. So be sure to hop into that live chat, join the discussion. We'll see you there. But before we jump into all of the fun we've got coming your way, someone's bumping their microphone. Not sure what's going on. It's live, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Pugliafico's here. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, everyone. And I'm afraid that was me.
Was it you?
I should have just muted, but I had to make an adjustment.
That's all right. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there. I'm the guy that never mutes when I adjust myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You probably don't make as much noise as I do.
It depends on what we're talking
Depends
about.
on what's happening. No, right?
I'm being off color and awful. No, hey guys, listeners, glad to have you with us.
That's all right. Jim's a handful too, so
yeah.
When adjusting himself. In any event, we do have a lot to talk about this week. So I think we're going to get to it here in just a second. But it looks like a few folks are already jumping on board with us in the live chat. Great to see you guys. Feel free, say hello. We'd love to hear from you guys. Those of you who are listening on digital tape delay, we'd love to hear from you too. But unless you can send messages back in time, they probably won't make it onto this episode at least. But remember, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. You'll find us. You can be part of the discussion that way. But guys, how are we feeling? Movie news? Yes, ready to go?
Yeah,
we're loaded this week. Yeah, I'm excited for movie news this week.
A lot's been going on. We've been sorting through the news stories, trying to find what's fit to talk about.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and that's the operative term there, because there's a lot of shit out there that's just hard to tackle right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's kind of a rough time for positive movie news. In any event, here we go. Some movie news. All right, this is the part of the show where we share with you, our listeners / watchers, interesting things happening in the film industry right now that we think might be, worth checking out, maybe, worth delving into a little bit more. We'll see. Will, why don't you kick us off this week? What have you got?
Yeah, so I've got one of those not so pleasant movie news items, or maybe pleasant depending on who you are. So there's been a film that's been in production by 20th Century Fox for a moment now, and it's Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a biopic starring Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury of Queen. And you've probably seen something about this movie because, at least for me on my Facebook feed, there was a little stretch there where every time Rami Malek had another photo of him like dressed up as Freddie Mercury, it just became like the shared image of the day. It went bonkers for a little bit there. Well, the movie was set to come out late late 2018. That was the original plan, and it might still, but they've had to at first halt production on it because director Bryan Singer, who you'll remember is the guy from The Usual Suspects and all of the X-Men movies and Having Sex with All Those Teenage Boys, he has stepped away from the project / been fired from it, and that's the part that's really fuzzy and shaky right now. Best I can piece together based on everything that Singer himself has said, as well as 20th Century Fox and Singer's studio, which is Bad Hat Harry. Singer was trying to take some time off because of a sick family member. At least that's what he claims. 20th Century Fox is saying he just went AWOL and wasn't there for several days of production. This is on the heels of, I guess, him and Rami Malek butting heads quite a bit, and a lot of heat that there's been like all sorts of like rough allegations for Singer in the past, but they've resurfaced lately, especially with Jessica Chastain kind of taking the point on kind of reminding everyone, hey, you know, in the midst of all this other stuff, you know, don't forget about this dude. So all of these things happening at the same time means this this movie that I was looking forward to has now been put on pause. They're now shopping around for a new director. They're going to let some of the production company stay on with it, as best as I can tell, just because they're already working with it. But this is a huge shakeup for this particular movie and for probably Singer's career as a whole. So my question to you guys is, have you been following this? Are you excited about this movie? And does this news affect your excitement for this movie at all?
Well, I hadn't been following any of the drama up until this week when it kind of blew up. And then I kind of read, you know, retroactively what has been going on. I had heard about the movie a long time ago. I didn't really look at any of the pictures of Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, but now that I have, it's like, wow, he looks pretty awesome. Any movie about, I happen to, it's kind of a soft spot of mine. I like movies about rock bands and rock stars and like biopics in that kind of subgenre. Always interests me, and this one had enough star power behind it that it sounded interesting to me. But yeah, it blew up this week. Bryan Singer's now fired off the job. His production company, I heard today, his production company has left like the building. They have left a lot. I also saw something today, late breaking, that he put out a statement. I don't know if you saw that, Will, and we can talk about what it says. I guess his side of the story, of course, all we were hearing at first was kind of the studios and the media side of the story, which says, yeah, he had some friction with Rami Malek back and forth. He was AWOL from the set too many times, so he's off the picture. But apparently, I guess he asked for time off because somebody in his family was sick. That's what he says. And I don't know if the studio wasn't going to let him do it or he just decided to take the time anyway and didn't show up. It's kind of a he said, they said, he said at this point. So I don't know. I don't know. What happened. It's just unfortunate when something like big like this happens in the middle of production of a movie, because you just don't want you hate it for the people involved, depending on what the situation is, but you also hate it because, the art might suffer. And kind of that's what we're all looking forward to as a good movie. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I heard about it. We'll have to see how it develops, who steps in to take it over and all that.
Indeed. This is one of those films where I have deliberately tried to read and see as little as possible. I'm a huge Queen fan, and it's definitely something I've been looking forward to. All the stuff going down with this whole mess is very unfortunate. Whether this movie comes out in 2018 or 2019, we don't know yet. But it will be interesting to see. I kind of wonder if there was some like proactive sidestepping of allegation finger pointing that might have caused some ruckus about this movie that they are hoping to avoid. I don't know. Again, they said, he said, Jim, that's a great way to put it. But it is unfortunate that the film and the audience looking forward to this film is going to suffer a little bit for it potentially.
Yeah, you got to imagine that those types of things, even if they weren't at the epicenter of this whole thing, that they probably didn't help whatsoever. If this were another film director who was in probably a more respected light, and I mean that from like the kind of the news side of things, if this was like a Spielberg and he bounced for a few days, I would imagine the studio having a lot more like patience on it. But I think the clashes with Malek, the absence that, when you aren't there for production, like it grinds everything to a halt, and it costs the studios money. And all of these allegations happening at the same time. Like, I think that's probably the bad hat trick on this one.
Well, I mean, those allegations have swirled around him for years now, right? And you know, in terms of his you know, sexual proclivities with young men or boys or whatever it was. And so I think when this happened, I think a lot of those things that were known from the past came to people's forefront. And that's all speculation, of course. It could have nothing to do with that. But it's certainly in this age of you know, all these stories we see about sexual improprieties, I'm sure that jumped right to the forefront of everybody's consciousness.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Very, very unfortunate. Well, Jim, do you have some happy news, maybe?
I have happy news for me, and I have happy news for, I hope, for fans of now, it's not movie news. Yeah, I had to actually go outside of the movie world to get some good news. So that's probably telling right there. But not quite movie news, but very closely related. One of the more cinematic TV series on Netflix or on TV right now is put out by Netflix called Black Mirror the last few years. It's kind of a sci-fi drama series that has put out some great content. Typically their format is to put out like, I think 6 episodes a season. So this will be their 4th season now. Some crazy stuff. We talked about episodes like San Junipero, which is probably like one of my favorite all-time, not just TV episodes, but like, you know, 90-minute pieces of drama in the last couple of years. So now the news is season 4, the trailers have been appearing online for all of the shows in season 4 of Black Mirror. And there's it looks like we have 6 episodes coming. There's a teaser trailer for each individual one. I've watched them all. They look pretty amazing. It looks like a very kind of off the wall, as you'd expect, and varied stories too. Everything from like this crazy like Star Trek looking remake thing, which with Jesse Plemons, whom we know from Breaking Bad, and what was that movie with Molly Shannon that we liked?
Other People.
That was the one.
Other People. Yeah.
Was that the one with the train song? Or was
that was the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We love Jesse Plemons, so it's good to see him in here. The guy Jimmy Simpson from the show Westworld, if you remember, he played William as Westworld. He's in there as one of the crew. So this one looks pretty good. There's one called Archangel about this. Something weird is going on. You can't tell from the trailers what's going on, but something weird's going on with this little girl, and it's directed by Jodie Foster. So we've got like high caliber people in front of the camera and behind the camera. I'm really, really excited for season 4 of Black Mirror. And word on the street is now they don't have an announced release date. They'll drop all of the episodes all at once. This is one of those shows that does that. But word on the street is we're probably going to see this before the end of the year dropping, because so that's something to look out for. Any fans of Black Mirror, look for season 4 coming on Netflix.
That's really exciting news, because I've enjoyed the previous 3 seasons, especially season 3 after Netflix took it over, basically, because I think originally it was like a BBC show, right? And so, you know, season 3 had a couple of big winners. Of course, San Junipero was huge, and we had Raymond McAnally on the show with us not too long ago. He was in that episode and kind of telling us about his experiences filming for Black Mirror, and it sounds pretty crazy awesome. And so looking at these trailers and seeing sort of what's coming has got me super jazzed. The Star Trek-ish episode, and Jim, I know you say this is kind of a cheat, but each episode is almost feature length. I mean, it's like each episode is almost a movie, right? So that's kind of how I look at them. Yes, it's a season of a TV show, I guess, but each one is like a self-contained movie. So for anyone out there who hasn't seen any of Black Mirror yet, A, go watch season 3 of San Junipero, but B, don't feel like you have to start at the beginning. I mean, it's all good for the most part. It's all worth checking out. But this Star Trek episode looks really fucking creepy. It's and I don't mean in like a scary alien kind of way, more like an off the wall, like, are people drugged out? Is this like a cult on a starship? I mean, I don't even fucking know what it is, but I can't wait to find out. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, one of the things that's so exciting about Black Mirror as a series is just the diversity of tone and subject matters like each episode has. You know, all of the episodes carry a very, very, very broad conceit in that they're some way tied to technology, which is, I mean, such a ubiquitous way of looking at it. Like these episodes are so diverse, and that's what makes it so appealing to me. When one of these seasons drops, I'm not going to necessarily connect with every single episode of the season, but I don't have to be in it for the long haul. If an episode doesn't click with me, great. The next one might be something that's more my tone. And by and large, most of them are pretty solid. I am looking forward to, USS Callister, the Star Trek-y one you guys were talking about. It also has Kristen Milioti in it, who was, if anyone's watched through to the end of How I Met Your Mother, she was the new cast member that appeared in the last season of that. I've been wanting to see her in something else, and so this is exciting. There's an episode called Archangel starring Rosemary DeWitt, directed by Jodie Foster. That one looks pretty cool, and because I like the horror stuff as well, Black Museum, directed by Colm McCarthy, that one looks like it has the potential to go pretty bonkers. But all 6 of the trailers are interesting. All 6 of them have very different things that they're showcasing. So yeah, if you're the type of person who loves science fiction but doesn't necessarily connect with all of it, like maybe you're not a Star Trek guy, or maybe you are, or maybe you're not a horror guy, but maybe you are, give this series a try, because there's going to be something in here that you will connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to bring up the Black Museum episode. Well, I'm glad you did, because I know the girl with all the gifts was one of the surprises from a couple of years ago, maybe last year. I can't remember. Pretty good zombie horror movie. If you like that kind of stuff. And the girl that stars in it, I never heard of her before. Letitia Wright. She's going to be in the new Black Panther movie that's coming out by Marvel, and Ready Player One. So this could be a star in the making, and you could see her maybe before before she hits big. So,
and then you can say, I knew her when
she was just on the Black Mirror episode.
Oh, goodness. Well, cannot wait till this drops. Jim, I'm sure you'll be staying on top of the news. It'll be all over Facebook, no doubt, when it's announced. But
yeah, it'll probably drop. It'll probably drop on a Monday when we don't have time to watch it until the weekend, and everybody will be talking about it, and everybody will have binged it on their Tuesday day off that we don't have.
Even worse, they've been doing this thing lately where they launch a lot of their new series on Friday, but when they launch it on Friday, they launch it at like midnight Pacific time on Friday morning. And so the people that are not working or just like staying up super late binge the whole thing, while those of us who work Fridays, which is all 3 of us, have to sit there and like, oh my gosh, don't spoil anything. Oh my gosh. That's going to happen.
Kind of bugs me a little bit too. I know some folks who, I don't know what it is. It's like they intentionally stay up. I guess they don't have work or something that day, and they binge watch it, not because they want to see it and enjoy it, but because they want to see it before everyone else and like be the first to social media to talk about it. Yep. They're like, I'm not even fans of this Marvel show, but I'm going to binge watch the whole thing overnight and be the first one. And they're the ones that are spoiling everything on Facebook Friday morning. and I just want to rip their throats out and spit down their, you know.
Wow, Brad.
Well, do it. Get it, Brad.
Wow,
Get it, Brad.
wow, Mildred.
But it's the equivalent of, have you seen those social media threads where someone posts something and then someone races to say first?
Mm-hmm.
Like that
First.
guy,
Yeah.
like, and it's the least valuable content of all content on the internet. And there is a group of people that do specifically that. Now, I don't fault someone for staying, like, I've done that with some of these shows, just kind of like, it's gonna suck tomorrow, but especially like movies are a little bit easier because it's only like an hour and a half, 2 hours instead of like an 8 hours. But I've done that. I've like, you know what, I really want to watch this. I'm going to stay up late and watch it. It's going to be a thing. And I suffer for it the next day. I get that. But I don't then turn around and say, guys, guess what I watched? Did you know that in episode 3? Oh, you're not that far yet. You know, it's such a shitty way to enjoy content.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but in any event, babe, whenever it drops, we'll get to watch it at some point. We may just have to avoid social media and
we'll join the conversation after it's all
social media Black Mirror.
Oh,
ooh,
goodness.
that would be a good Black Mirror episode. Come to think of it,
social media blackout
about spoiling and binge watching. It would be good. Yeah,
write it.
We're like
send the spec script over to Charlie Booker now.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, guys, we have a whole movie to discuss. I had a news bit, but gosh, we're so far into the show.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
I don't know if we. We'll very quickly
give it a quick one.
We'll short shrift my item, but that's okay because honestly, I've reported Disney news the last couple weeks anyway. So Disney's in the news again. Big surprise.
What?
I know.
So yeah.
Disney is reportedly, because nothing's been confirmed, working on a deal with Fox to buy 20th Century Fox for an estimated $60 billion, potentially. And this deal could be solidified and inked next week. What's interesting about this deal is it's going to move all of the properties like X-Men and Deadpool under the Disney MCU banner. My question for you guys, and we can make this very quick, is this a good thing to bring these characters home, so to speak, to the MCU? Or is this giving Disney a dangerous monopoly on these properties?
If we're only talking in terms of these specific properties, it's a good thing because aside from a couple of movies here and there, I haven't trusted Fox with these properties. They've put out more bad superhero movies than good ones. So by that logic, I would much rather see these characters under Marvel's control, Disney's control, who has done a much better job with their properties and with Spider-Man, who they got from Sony. Like, that's the right place for these characters. The problem comes from the fact that we're not just talking about these individual characters. We're talking about a lot of the other different Fox properties, basically everything that's not like the news and the sports and the broadcast network itself, but a lot of those other assets, including stuff that's like at Hulu, the different movie studios that fall underneath it. The properties underneath the broadcast would fall under. So The Simpsons would be under Disney's control at that point, which might mean the end of The Simpsons, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it might be an unceremonious way for it to go out. So I'm concerned about this deal. I'm excited about the X-Men maybe being under Disney, but that's outweighed by the fact that I think the monopoly is ultimately a bad thing in so many other areas.
So what does this mean movie-wise, guys, really, for us? I mean, what do you think it means? Because in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong-headed on this, I'm thinking, oh, Disney must be getting to the end of their Marvel ideas and are starting to, like, mine for the future for new properties that they can branch their movies into. Is that?
Well, I think part of it is, there's been this whole build up, right, for these Avengers movies. And we've got, of course, Avengers Infinity War parts 1 and 2 coming up. And then we're entering a whole new phase of these films. And so they're trying to, I think, kind of work some of this stuff out. And Will, your comic knowledge is at least from a Marvel standpoint, way more than mine. But we've had X-Men characters working with the Avengers or been part of the Avengers team in the past, right?
Oh,
so this deal, bringing X-Men characters over, you could see, Wolverine running around with the Avengers. I mean, it definitely opens a lot of doors for new crossovers and movies that probably couldn't have taken place otherwise.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that Disney owns, of course, the cinematic universe part of it, but that trickles down to the comic books as well. This is a very popular comic book franchise that it's hard for Marvel as the comic book company to do as much with when they know that the part of the appeal will then feed back into the movies, which are owned by a completely different company. So we've seen this in the comic book world. We've seen the X-Men have a smaller and smaller portion of that world as the Avengers properties become a larger part, which is great. Those are cool characters too. But I like the idea of Marvel having control over its characters again. Like, I think that from a continuity perspective, from a quality perspective, that's ultimately a good thing. But again, there's so many other things that there's so much extra splash damage that's going to happen here outside of the superhero realm that I don't know that it's worth it. I wish they were just purchasing these properties and not entirely purchasing the 20th Century Fox stuff, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. And they tried to do that, and the deal just didn't apparently go through.
Yeah.
I mean, Fox isn't dumb. They know what Disney wants, and I think they're trying to make Disney pay to get it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe next week we'll have a little bit more information on this if it goes through or not. But it'll definitely be interesting to see. I mean, guys, I think at this point we need a Disney version of Monopoly that, rather than having like Cinderella's Castle and Peter Pan's, like, it should just be the different franchises it owns, and players have to like auction them off and try and acquire as many of them as possible to rule the empire.
That's exactly what one of our guys in the chat, Steve, said. He said, Disney is like that person who takes Monopoly way too seriously and buys everything. And then I said, yeah, and ruins the fun for everyone else in the game.
It's scary because it's like, at least from my perspective, they're a mark of quality. Disney, when I look at the animated movies from both Disney and Pixar, aside from a few others like Ghibli and a few others out there, they're by and large making the best stuff. When it comes to
high bar, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to superhero movies, I'm saying the same thing. If I were to rank my top 25 superhero movies, probably 19 of them or 17 of them would be the Marvel movies that have the Disney Marvel movies that have come out, because there's a higher bar of quality with those films. So I love all of that. I love how meticulous they are with their craft and how passionate they are about making sure that the fans get what they want out of their properties. But that quality becomes such a large umbrella that it can also stifle kind of the smaller levels of creativity. And that's something that 20th Century Fox does have going for it. It has a lot of things that are not superheroes or not tent poles that it does put out. And I'm worried how those will flourish or maybe be stamped out underneath Disney.
We'll have to see what happens. Could be a lot of worry over nothing, because remember, this is reported news. It's not necessarily news that has happened yet. So we'll have to see how this all shakes out. But definitely interesting to think about. Guys, we got a movie to review. We are 40 minutes into the show. How do we feel about making that transition? Is it movie time, guys? Are we good?
Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's always movie time.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we're going to be talking about Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, the new film starring Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, Peter Dinklage, and a whole bunch of other people. We're going to talk about this film spoiler-free, though, for a little while. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you're scratching your head and you're like, Three Billboards Outside, what even the fuck is that? The title's more than three words. I can't follow that.
And it doesn't start with Marvel or Disney.
Guys, hang around for this conversation. We're going to talk about whether this movie lives up to the hype you may have been hearing. I hate hype. I hate hype machines. They drive me crazy. But it'll be interesting to talk to you guys a little bit about that. And if anyone's maybe on the fence about seeing this movie, Star Wars isn't out yet, you guys. We got another weekend between now and then. So you gotta go see something at the movies next weekend. This could be it. Question mark? Potentially. We'll see. But all of that said, we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. So no worries. If you need a little time to fumble with your radio, if you're listening on digital tape delay, or mute us, step away and come back for plugs, we'll make sure you're covered. All of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. All right, so Jim, I know the wait for us to see this movie was incredibly frustrating because it was one of those films that, opened on either coast, and Arizona just is not on the coast. So we had to wait a long time. Jim, I know you were particularly excited for this one. Give us the basic setup if you don't mind. And was this worth the wait? Should people see this in theaters? Should they rent it, skip it? What's your feeling?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you my feelings because I'm that kind of person. Now, I am. Let me first start by saying that this is the story of a mother played by Frances McDormand in a small town whose daughter was the victim of a brutal rape and murder, unsolved rape and murder. So Frances McDormand internalizes this, and she aggressively goes out and rents basically 3 billboards by the side of the road for the purpose of taunting, baiting, and aggravating the local police into action to do something about solving her daughter's unsolved murder by putting these billboards up. This one, as you mentioned, we already mentioned Frances McDormand. We'll talk about her later. Also has Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, Peter Dinklage, John Hawkes, who I was happy to see in this movie. I'm just going to say up front, and this one was written and directed by Martin McDonagh, who did a couple movies from the last few years. In Bruges, you may have seen that one, or Seven Psychopaths a little bit more recently, also starring Sam Rockwell, by the way. I'm just going to say up front, I really love this movie. And yes, Brad, you talked about kind of the frustration of trying to see this movie. This is a movie, not only did it open in other places and we couldn't see it, but it was supposed to be the opening night film for a film festival that we went to back in September, only to have events happen, and the studio pulled the movie from the festival kind of unceremoniously, pulling the rug out from under the people like us who kind of wanted to see it. And that still left a bad taste in my mouth. But yeah, this was totally worth the wait. Really thrilled me to see this movie. It's a strong contender, I think, for many people's like end of the year lists, and definitely mine. I'm going to say that up front before we get into too much, but a really, really strong movie that I'm going to recommend right from the outset, mainly because I just love movies about characters, strong characters, and with sharp writing, especially well-developed characters. It doesn't have to have plot. To me, is great, but for me, it's about characters and story. And this movie has probably the sharpest character and dialogue of a movie, maybe all year. The movie really is kind of an examination of, and it could be interpreted many ways, probably by many different people, but I see it as an examination of like hate and forgiveness and how violence and lashing out can beget just more of the same. That's generally what the themes of this movie are. And there's a lot to unpack. And while I don't think it ultimately has any easy answers to these big problems that it raises, I think it definitely holds up like a big, bright mirror to today's society, what's going on in today's society, how people have this rage going on in them about various different things. And it does it so smartly without being too on the nose. The cast is fantastic from top to bottom. We mentioned McDormand. She really digs into this character of that I don't know if I could see really anybody else playing this character, really flexing her muscles. I'm 99.9% certain she will be nominated for Best Actress this year, and deservingly so. I'd be shocked if she didn't get at least a nomination, and I think it's well deserved. Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell are also great as her foils, kind of the police chief and his deputy. And like many great stories, dramas, this one can be hard to watch at times. It doesn't pull any punches. It's ugly at times, and it allows the characters to represent real people with real complexities. But there's plenty of dark comic laughs in this one, too. I laughed really hard at a lot of stuff in this movie, and I also gasped, 2 minutes later at what was happening. So great writing, absolute recommend, a must-see for me. Yeah, go see this one.
All right. That's a big hearty recommend from Jim. So for me, I mentioned earlier in the show, I hate hype machines. I try to avoid hype. I don't know. Does that make me an anti-hypester? I guess maybe. Heard a lot of things about this movie, and going into Fantastic Fest, I was like, well, this is going to be like probably one of the movies of the festival that everyone's going to be talking about. And then, like you said, Jim, the movie ended up getting pulled from the lineup, which actually to me, I think was kind of a relief in a way, because this is hard to say, but movie festivals, film festivals are fun for me. But when I see 30 movies like it's my job, they start to blend together. Seeing so many movies at one time, I think they start to kind of lose some of their brilliance and individuality to me. Yeah, right. So I'm actually kind of glad in a way that we didn't get this movie at the festival, because, if I'm trying to wrap my head around Three Billboards and I'm seeing all these other great films, at least for my film goer brain, I don't think I would have appreciated it maybe as much, because I wouldn't have had the same time for it to marinate in my thoughts the way that it has, having just seen it a couple weeks ago at this point. Jim, you mentioned a lot of great things about this film. Frances McDormand, I tell you, first came onto my radar with Fargo, of course, like with so many of us. But she's done so many great things, been so wonderful in so many things. Every time she's in a new movie or project, I'm just like, well, it's going to be Frances McDormand being Frances McDormand. It's not going to be anything special this time. We're getting to the end of that, and every fucking time she blows me away. Last I saw her was in Olive Kitteridge, the TV miniseries special.
Really great.
Which, my God, she was amazing in. So coming into Three Billboards, I'm like, yeah, it looks like she's Olive Kitteridge all over again. There was a little bit of that, but you know what? This character is really her own thing, and I love that. Yes, we get some of the like brash Frances McDormand-y stuff that she's known for, but what I really like about her performance in this film is the stuff when she's not talking. And before you accuse me of being a misogynist, it's not because women shouldn't talk. It's more so she's one of those like once in a generation actors, I think, who can sell emotions with just her face and her eyes and the way that she moves her hand or the flash of her throat. Like, she doesn't have to be talking to get the most emotional stuff across. There's a part in this movie, I won't spoil it right now, we'll talk about it later, where she, is talking to somebody, gets some news. There's no dialogue for like a minute. We're just looking at her face and his face and sort of feeling the silence settle between them, and just the looks that Frances McDormand gives. That alone made me cry. Not even like the news she gets. It's just her performance is so powerful. So, Jim, I agree. I think if she doesn't get a nomination, the world is crazy and should be lit on fire. It's gonna be Trump winning the presidency all over again for me. God. But I also got to say, Woody Harrelson, who I traditionally do not like at all in anything, was amazing in this. Absolutely loved him here. It was probably one of the first times I took a step back and just like really paid attention to this guy. His performance here was really, really great. Sam Rockwell, who is a little hit or miss for me. surprisingly was a big hit here. And we'll talk more in spoilers about his character and what goes on there, but that was probably one of the most powerful things about this movie for me. Peter Dinklage, love me some Game of Thrones. Tyrion, in this movie, I don't know, wasn't a big deal for me, but it was kind of interesting to see him not wearing leather and, you know, petting dragons.
Chainmail.
So, yeah, exactly. So, in any event, I could go on a lot more. We'll do so in spoilers, but this movie is definitely a huge recommend for me, especially this coming weekend. If you're looking for something to see before Star Wars comes out, now that this thing has hit a more wide release, definitely go and check it out. Will, I feel like I know you've talked about this movie a couple times on the show because you saw it way before we did. I think you even plugged it once, but I know what you're going to say, but I think you should say it anyway for anyone who hasn't already heard it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's all right. No,
liar.
Special.
I'm a lying liar who lies. So yeah, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is one of the best movies of the year. I'm right there with you, Jim. I've been in this mode recently where I've been forecasting ahead to what my top 10 of the year list is going to look like, just starting to think about it, you know? And as soon as Three Billboards came out, it just sort of like elbowed a few things aside. And it's like, no, guys, I'm going to be one of the top films on this list. You will be hearing from, unless like the last part of 2017 is filled with, oh, I don't know, like 8 fantastic movies that just completely blow me away. Three Billboards is probably going to be pretty high on my year-end list, and deservedly so. This is a hell of a movie that defies genre in some ways. It's a very heavily dramatic film that taps into some very, very serious subject matter, stuff that's especially timely kind of given the current culture of 2017, all of the stuff that's been happening with the Hollywood allegations, the hashtag Me Too campaign, the stuff going on and like the political races, including like what's happening in Alabama right now with Judge Roy Moore. All of this stuff is created this this canvas where I think Three Billboards is, outside of it being an amazing film, and it is an amazing film, it's especially important right now amidst all of this other stuff. But at the same time, it's darkly comedic as well. Like, this is not like, there's some of these like, oh, it's an important movie about important things that are just a slog to get through, right? Like, I get it. Things are important, but there's a lot of levity in this movie, and it hits you at different angles because, like, you'll be gobsmacked over something and just gutted, and then a moment later you'll be laughing at something, and it's all done tastefully. It's because these characters, as you guys had mentioned, are so well developed and so fleshed out. Frances McDormand puts on a workshop here. One of the best performances of the year. I am a Sam Rockwell guy, and this film was sort of like kind of proof of concept of that for me. Like, this is a film that just reminded me why he is someone that I enjoy seeing on screen so much. Woody Harrelson is great here as well. The three of those actors, granted the entire supporting cast I think puts in great work, but those three carry the heaviest weight on their shoulders, and all three do so exquisitely. This is going to be a hard film for some people to watch because it does deal with, and you mentioned it, Jim. It does deal with rape as a topic, and that's uncomfortable for people to watch, and I get that. So it's one of those films that's hard for me to recommend to everyone, because there are people that are survivors of sexual assault who are going to have a problem, having to re-deal with some of this stuff. I get that. But aside from that, taking that out of the mix, this is one of the best films of the year, one of the best films of the now. It should absolutely be watched by anyone that is at all looking for just complex and creative and interesting and well-developed filmmaking on all fronts, from story to character to script to direction. This movie is the goods and should absolutely be watched.
Yeah, Will, you talked about, I agree with everything you said. You talked about The movie deals with a difficult subject matter, that being the rape and murder of a young woman. But there are other things in this movie too that are just as hard to watch. There's, you know, and I don't think these are terrible spoilers, but there's racism, there's homophobia, there's just a lot of social badness going on in this movie. And like I said, the movie doesn't really offer answers, a lot of answers, or easy, at least easy ones, but it does put up that mirror and kind of urge us to look at what's going on with us and the people around us, and take a look, maybe look upon things maybe with some more understanding. I think that's what this movie's general message is.
It's also a powder keg. I think that there are movies that address subject matters like this that do so from a very pat perspective. Like, by the end of it, everything's going to be tied up in a nice little bow, and you're going to walk away with exactly this message or exactly that message. And that's a fine way of making movies. That's a very targeted and focused. But this is more like a powder keg of ideas, because while you have this central conceit of, what happens when this woman is outraged over the fact that the people that raped and murdered her daughter, they've not been brought to justice, and you feel for her and you empathize with her, because this is a terrible thing, and the fact that there is no justice for these people at the outset of this movie is something that would affect all of us. But as the movie unwinds and more things come into play, I love that it's never easy. It's never contrived. It's never overly processed. This is a movie more about, like, when you have this terrible thing, it has this ripple effect on everyone around it, from the people at the epicenter, including the victims and the family members, to everyone who is touched by, is touched tangentially by this event. This has this has fingers that stretch into the lives of everyone inside of this town because of this one event and the reactions that come from it. And I think that's important too. I think it's important to look at these, from an issues perspective, looking at these big issues and saying that it's not just this small thing that happens to some people sometimes in very controlled circumstances. It's much more epidemic than that, and it impacts all of our lives in some way, shape, or form. I like that the film is saying that, and I think that I like that the film is saying that it's messy and it's never easy, and that there are no clean answers, because we're dealing with a really complex subject. I love that the film gets that across so well, while also not directly saying that.
And I think it's also interesting too how it sort of comments on, like, how long society is willing to be, like, understanding and pitiable. Is pitiable the right word here? How long they're willing to give pity, I guess, to someone who is experiencing something so terrible, right? Some of the characters in this film, and we're going to talk spoilers, but, it's almost like you can tell that their, like, give a fuck has been used up. Even though this woman had this terrible thing happen to her daughter, it's like, it's been a certain amount of time since then, and it's like, they care, but they don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? She's just the crazy lady in town, whatever. And so that's kind of interesting, but also very sad for me. But then I go on Facebook, as one does, and I see people who are like, Patton Oswalt's wife died a year ago. Who the fuck cares about his wife dying anymore? He's moving on. Get over it. It just, I don't know. It's interesting for me the way that people who aren't going through grief perceive and act on the grief of others. So this movie was interesting for me in that right too.
Yeah, grief's this thing that, like, I don't know that you ever truly get over grief. Like, you cope with it, and it becomes less of like a specter, like, over your life. But, like, when you experience something like that, the loss of someone that close, especially in this case, such traumatic event, that's like, that you carry that with you for life. Like, there's no, like, getting over that. There's coping and dealing with and all of that. But and you're absolutely right. Like, the Patton Oswalt thing was such a frustrating example for me. I saw so many people saying, why is he getting remarried? Like why, shouldn't he be still in mourning, or vice versa? Why is he still doing stand-up comedy about this? Shouldn't he be over it by now? So he's basically been criticized for getting over it and also for not getting over it in the same breath.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. Just let the man do what he does.
Yeah. Twitter, social media can be such a downer these days. Like it's almost like, everybody's gotten a strong opinion on everything. And if we had half as much understanding as opinion out there, we'd be doing a lot better than we are now. It's just, there just isn't enough to go around, and not that this movie out and out says that, but it, as I said, with the mirror up to you, you can't help but think like, yeah, there needs to be more understanding for people and their issues, as opposed to just outright judgment. So, yeah.
Agreed. Well, guys, we're quickly running out of showtime, and I do want to move us. I know. I do want to move us to spoilers, though. I don't want us to lose our opportunity to do that. So this is the part where I awkwardly take a long time to talk so that you have time to either hit the pause button if you're listening on digital tape delay, and maybe use the time index in the show notes that Jim so lovingly crafts for you every week. Thank you, Jim. With love from Jim, with love. But feel free to use those show notes. Skip ahead to plugs if you want to avoid spoilers. If you're listening live, glad to have you with us. You may want to go ahead and mute us. Come back in about 15 minutes or so and rejoin us for plugs. Or go see Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and then come on back and watch the rest of the episode. We'll see you later. Bobby Miller, he's checking out because he hasn't seen the movie yet. Bobby, hope you love it. Go see it. In any event, spoilers are officially fair game. I feel like I draw this out every week, but a couple people recently have been like, you know what we like about the Movie Bears podcast? That you give us an opportunity to avoid spoilers, because some other podcasts just jump right in and you don't even have time to hit pause before you're spoiled. So,
guys, we're getting ready to move to spoilers, and Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time. Wait, what?
Right?
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. In any event, all right, so let's get started with some spoilers here. First thing I want to talk about, I mentioned Woody Harrelson. Usually, what the fuck? I don't care. I thought he was tremendous in this film. Were you guys surprised by the whole like cancer / killing himself thing? Or was that kind of telegraphed? What'd you guys think here?
I was surprised by it, but I find myself surprised by a lot of things in movies that people figure out way before I do. I don't know. Maybe I just I think I let myself go to the whim of the story more than other people do. I was really surprised because the movie did a misdirect there. They talked about him getting rid of the horses or something like that. I forget what it was. I actually thought he was getting ready to go out and, shoot the horses or something. I didn't know what was going on until I saw the bag come out, and he put it over his head. But yeah, I didn't get that at all. And that was a really shocking scene. I mean, I'm not sure what part it played in kind of the overall movie. He was already a very interesting character, and we lost him halfway through the movie. And that is kind of a shame, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't that surprised. Were you?
For me, it was it wasn't telegraphed at all. I think they telegraphed or whatever, they said he was dying of cancer. So it was okay, yeah, he's probably going to die at some point. Maybe a few minutes before you did, but it was as he was kissing his wife, and she was drunk on the couch. That was about the time where I'm like, wait a minute, this is, but that, but that doesn't matter. Because I think what's so great about this particular character is he served sort of a dual purpose for me. This is a character who was sort of the, if you look at this film as sides, right? You have like Frances McDormand's side and just, basically the equivalent of like, fuck the police, you need to do better. And then you've got the police themselves, which would probably be more represented by the Sam Rockwell character, which is like, yeah, well, fuck you, lady. We're already doing stuff. And, besides, like, what do you want us to do? That's right. Sort of like that's the side that we've got. And everyone in town sort of shifts to some side or the other. And Woody Harrelson's this like peacekeeper in between. He's the one who sort of cuts Mildred some slack while also still being a part of the police system and kind of understanding where they're coming from. And so this character, when he is removed from the story, he becomes the catalyst for all of the crazy shit that follows.
Yeah, it destabilizes the whole situation.
But he also becomes the catalyst for both of the characters, like every one of the characters that he I mean primarily Mildred and the Sam Rockwell character, both of the characters have a change kind of in the third act of this movie, and I would posit that a lot of that change is based on their reaction and the lessons they learned from the Woody Harrelson character through the course of the film. And so I think that's particularly exciting for me. This is a character who is both a bridge, keeping the sides from fighting, and also even posthumously, he's someone who's sort of this, he has this bubble effect around everyone, making them be better. I like that. I like that as that character role in this film.
Yeah, he was definitely the voice of reason, and I thought one of the reasons why, and I may have misspoke earlier, I was taken by surprise by that is because like a couple scenes before that, the family is out at the lake and the kids are fishing, and the mom and dad decide, oh, we're going to go over here and we're going to go, have sex or whatever, and they left the two little girls like by the side of the lake fishing, and I had this sense of dread, like, oh God, something's going to happen to the girls. Like, we know there's a murder rapist going around somewhere. And I just had, it felt kind of really strange to me, the way that scene played out. And I don't think maybe it wasn't intended that way, but it did. Also, Woody Harrelson and Frances McDormand have the best scene in the movie sometime before that, when she finds out that he's got cancer. It's a pretty dramatic scene where he like has this coughing attack and he like spits blood like all over her face.
That was
and
amazing.
Like everybody in the audience that I saw was like, oh my God, like the big gasp in the audience, what happened? But her acting in that scene is fantastic. Like she goes from like giving him hell to like seeing what happened and instantly turn empathetic toward him.
Oh yeah.
Which humanized her character like in a split second. And I thought it was brilliant the way that scene played out.
God, that was so crazy intense. Like, because the scene is building, and she's so angry, and he is like in this weird middle position where he's kind of angry with her, but he's trying to help her, and she won't fucking get out of her own way. And then all of a sudden that happens. And you're right, Jim, that transition she makes from like bitter, fed up bitch to I think she just reaches out and grabs him, and she's like, "Oh, sweetie, honey, it's okay." And she holds him like a mom. Like that broke me, guys. Like that made me #insta tears.
Yeah,
right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the best acting scenes maybe all year that I've seen in a movie. And then I mean, there's just so much strong stuff in this movie. And she's not, of course, she's angry, and there may be people in the audience who kind of like, she's easy to sympathize with and have empathy for. She's the mother whose daughter has been brutally murdered, and obviously she feels guilt toward that too. There was a scene earlier in the movie where she and her daughter have this fight just before she goes out, and the daughter says, I hope I get raped or something, and Frances McDormand says, yeah, I hope so too. And they show that, and you're like, oh my god, that's a gun punch.
That's the only time we see that daughter in the film, and and that is her last lines are, "I hope I get raped," and the mother saying, "Yeah, I hope you do too." And then it cuts away from that scene right away. We're talking insta tears. That was it for me, because that particular moment, like, I mean, how many of us have said something that we regretted after the fact? How many of us can empathize with, like, can you imagine, like, the guilt that you would carry if that was the last thing to you that you said to your raped and murdered daughter? Like, I can't comprehend that. So yeah, that was my insta tears.
Yeah, just so much, that hard stuff to watch, but great stuff, and man, yeah. I want to talk about some of the supporting characters too. Peter Dinklage was good in this movie. He didn't have a big part. I did like John Hawkes, though. John Hawkes played the Frances McDormand's ex-husband, who is shacked up with this young woman, and that provided a lot of the kind of the dark comic stuff in the movie. But I thought the relationship between them was very, very authentic. I enjoyed that. I adore John Hawkes as an actor. I'll watch anything he's in. And the two of them together for me was seeing them was great. Any other moments for you guys that stood out in the movie?
You go first, Brad.
I think another big moment for me. Okay, so Sam Rockwell is in the police station. Frances McDormand makes her Molotov cocktails. She's throwing them in the windows, sets it on fire. And Sam Rockwell, I mean, his character, Jason Dixon, has been such a dick, like, all over everybody the whole movie. And all of a sudden he fucking jumps out the window, and it's like, okay, great. He's survived. The dick lives another day. But what is he clutching in his hands that Frances McDormand's character Mildred sees? The file for her daughter's rape case.
Mm-hmm.
So, here she is trying to destroy the station and wreak havoc, right? And this guy who's been a total dick is the one that's still trying to, like, help her out. And I think it's such an interesting sort of look at, I mentioned earlier, she keeps getting in her way, right? She has nowhere for this rage and pent up frustration really to go. And the whole town is now turning on her because of the billboards and the situation, the ripple effect, Will, that you mentioned earlier. It's all turning everything inward. And, Mildred is like this just pressure cooker with nowhere to let that pressure go. And so it starts coming out in these different ways. And at that point, she runs over to Sam Rockwell's character. She sees what she's done. And I think there's a bit of a transformation of her character. And from that moment on, the trajectory of both those characters go from being widely apart to intertwined together. It's like weird reality shifting events. And I mentioned earlier, there's sort of this moment, right, where she gets some news and it's not the news she was expecting. I think that moment sets us on this trajectory of Mildred and Jason on the swings. And Jason was trying not to get her hopes up when he thought he had figured out, who killed her daughter. They were waiting to hear back the results of DNA tests and stuff like that. And they're just on this swing set, probably her daughter's swing set. And she learns that it wasn't the guy. And there's like a minute with no dialogue. It's just them sitting there in the swing sets. Frances McDormand is like looking away from the camera, and her throat is like moving, and it's almost like she's got this well of emotion she's just trying to like keep inside. You can see the muscles of her throat like flexing down, almost like they're physically pushing those emotions back down and inside. And then she looks at him and she's like, well, okay. And then boom, you know what I mean? And I don't know, those two big moments, I guess, were the other ones for me that just fucking blew me away.
Yeah. There's this throwaway line that happens very early on in the movie. It's actually something that the Chief Willoughby, the Woody Harrelson character, says. He's trying to placate Mildred. It's when he first visits her with the signs and reveals he has cancer. But he also says this thing to her where it's like, look, we tried, we tested the DNA of the people in the criminal database and nothing came up. But these things just kind of have a way of resolving themselves randomly. Like somebody will talk too much at a bar a couple of years from now and say the wrong thing, and someone will overhear it, and that'll crack the case. Willoughby then has this like moment where after posthumously, he writes this letter to Dixon about, like, hey, you're a shithead, but I believe that you can be better than you are. And that then leads to Dixon having that exact moment that Willoughby almost like, crystal ball. So, he's sitting in the bar and he's overhearing the things, just like Willoughby said. So one of my favorite scenes in the movie is all of those things come to a head, and we've got Dixon. He's drunk and he's fucked up from the fire and from the hospital, and which was another great scene. The scene where Red gives him the orange juice just was so fucking great.
That was amazing.
But this scene where he gets his ass kicked just so he can get some DNA, just so he can do this right thing, like that was one of my absolute favorite and most impactful scenes in the movie, because it felt very redemptive for a character that should have been beyond redemption, and who at the end of the day is a racist, homophobic asshole. Like he is still those things.
Yes.
But it made me really think about the concept of redemption, and like, can someone who is a terrible shitbag, can they do great things, or at least better things? Can they be better than they were? And should we appreciate that?
Or do they have other sides?
Yeah, and you can, like, he's still a racist homophobe. Like those things are still there. But the fact that he did this thing and he did it well, even though the results didn't pan out, that almost doesn't matter to me. Like what he did was the right thing for this woman who was grieving, a woman who he should have hated, a woman who he should have like held more like, of a vindictive attitude towards, but he tried to do the right thing. He tried to be the detective in that moment. That was incredibly powerful because it said a whole fucking lot, and that's what this movie is doing at all sides. It's making you examine every single angle from every single character and why they're doing the things that they're doing. So that scene was my gut punch.
And it's so brilliant too, because again, this unexpected friendship is probably the wrong word, but unexpected like understanding, between Mildred and Jason. I don't know. It's so powerful. Like there's a moment where they're in the car at the end, they're driving out, they're going to kill this guy. They're not going to kill this guy. We don't know. But she's like, I'm the one who like torched the police station. Right. And he looks at her. He's like, I know. And it's almost like this character has accepted that this is like his penance for being the world's biggest like dickhole. You know what I mean? And I think it's incredibly potent how these moments just sort of hang between them, right? And they've found this unlikely way of caring for each other in a way, a little bit. Jim, Will and I have been talking forever. I mean, what about your thoughts? I mean, were there any other big moments?
No, I will mention the orange juice scene. Again, another moment of empathy and understanding, which I think went. Red offers Jason, who's bandaged up, and he really, I think he knew who it was. He knew who it was once he figured out that it was Jason, the guy who had brutally beat him, and just because he helped put up the billboards. And Jason, I don't know if Red is actually gay in the movie, but Jason calls him all kinds of homophobic stuff, beats the shit out of him, throws him out like a second-story window, and really badly hurts him. And when they're both end up in the same hospital room, Red offers him the orange juice, even though he knows who it is. And to me, that informed us a lot about. I don't know. It spoke to Jason's character, that he's seeing what the power of like empathy and sympathy and forgiveness and redemption are all about, and what Red took the higher road in that scenario, and I think maybe got the wheels turning a little bit more in Jason's head. Like, hey, maybe these awful things I did, they're really not the road I should be on, and they're not going to get me anywhere in this world. I love that scene. And the ending was kind of strange, the way it was left in the air. I love the way, though, that the movie plot wise had everybody in the audience thinking, oh yeah, this is the guy, they're going to catch the guy and Jason's going to be the hero, and the goat is now going to get turned into the hero. And the movie totally subverts that. You could hear the air let out of the audience we were in when they announced the results of the test, that was not the guy. He's just not the guy. And they had to say that 3 or 4 times, not just to convince the characters on the screen that it wasn't the guy, but to convince the audience who had their hopes up, that was going to be the guy. And I thought that was great storytelling also.
It's weird. Like, this movie actually says 2 separate things, and I think they're both valid. And I think the film says they're both valid. Like, this film supports the idea that vindictive rage is okay. This film also supports the idea that forgiveness and compassion are okay too. And it's okay with both lines of thinking. Like, the Dixon character gets forgiveness from Willoughby, from Red, and from Mildred herself. And even Mildred has a moment of forgiveness for her husband, played beautifully by John Hawkes in this film, at the diner, the restaurant scene there towards the end of the movie. But at the same time, we're not meant to think that the Three Billboards themselves, which is it's an act of suffering and of pain, it's lashing out of pain, when she gets those. We're not meant to think that the Three Billboards themselves was a bad idea, nor are we really made to think that necessarily the act that they're on at the end, like they're driving off to go kill a dude. And it's not necessarily presented as like, hey, they're awful for doing this. I think the film is very okay with drawing the line in the sand that says forgiveness is okay, but also people need to be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I kind of, in my mind, I think they're driving off maybe with the idea if they're going to go find and kill a guy. But in my mind, I'm thinking that along the way, they kind of, come to their senses a little bit and kind of reflect back on what's happened. One last thing, I know we're long. I just want to say that some people, and I've heard this on other shows, and I've read this in other articles, say that we're attacking the writer, director McDonough, for being a little tone deaf and letting the Jason character off easy for his deeds.
Wait a second.
Yep, they say that we're showing all this racism and homophobia and stuff, but yet he never really gets his what's coming to him. Now, all I'm going to say about that is I can understand why people might say that. I don't personally agree. I think if you look at the movie, you'll see that he's suffering consequences of those actions as well. Now maybe people don't think it's equal or it's fair or whatever, but and some of the things he did were certainly bad, but I don't know what they expect at the end of this movie. I think this movie, again, just wants to shine a light on these things and let us examine those.
Yeah. I mean, this is a film that is about the idea that closure is not easy,
Yes.
and that we don't always get closure for the things that hurt us in life. And so the fact that the audience doesn't get closure for this one character being an asshole is fitting. Sometimes it's okay to have those wish fulfillment films where, the good guy gets the girl, the bad guy, gets, falls in the snow and gets his comeuppance. Like, that's not what this movie is. This is a movie about the fact that we carry these things forever and will carry these things, and that it's not easy and that it's messy. And I think that if you walk out of this film upset by those things, I hate to say this thing about movies because it is kind of a shitty way of talking about films, but I think if you're upset that Dixon doesn't get his comeuppance here, I don't know if you get what the film is trying to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw it called, he gets his nice little redemption arc, at the end of the movie. And I don't know. I kind of bristled at that a little bit and
Yeah.
on Twitter, and I'm like, I'm not going to argue this.
It's an impossible argument to participate in and win.
Today's, you can't. Yeah.
I look at social media anymore. Like there's so many things on Facebook and Twitter every day that I'm like, I should just weigh in here. And then I start to type, and then I'm like, why am I expending energy on this?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? What is it going to accomplish? Nothing, right? But you know what I do love? I do love that we can come together like this on the show. I love talking about movies like this, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, with you guys, it's so much fun. Also with our listeners, we've had a lot of folks kind of coming in and out tonight in the live chat. Not a lot of folks have seen this movie in our community, unfortunately. It's one of those weird things where a weird title or a long title throws people off. Someone on Facebook the other day, I commented about Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and they literally said that movie title has too many words in it. I'm not going to see it.
Yeah. Hey.
And I'm like, well, okay, that's unfortunate, but it's definitely nice to be able to kind of talk through some of these things. But Jim, you are right. We're running long, and I know we want to get to a couple of plugs here before we wrap up. So I'm going to put a pretty little bow on Three Billboards that Three Billboards can't put a pretty little bow on itself, and we're just going to move forward. If you guys are on board with that, Jim, Will, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion, and great movies spawn really great discussions. So that's another indicator of how good this movie is.
Agreed. Absolutely. Well, plugs for this week. I'll start us off here. I have a plug for a TV show. It's kind of a cheat, I guess, but it was inspired by a movie that we saw a while back called Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. This is a new Netflix series called Shot in the Dark, and it follows a series of what are called stringers around. There are those people out there in the middle of the night who are racing from accident scene to crime scene, just like Jake in the movie Nightcrawler, to try and get the footage to sell to the news. Nightcrawler really paints these stringers as deplorable people in some ways. A phenomenal film. Go out. You should definitely see that film. But this series, I think, takes a little more of a measured approach to showing some of the qualities, good and bad, of these different stringers who are out there. Basically, police radio and ambulance chasing to try and get this footage that you wake up to on the news. It does some really cool visual things. It's got this neat satellite map system where they show where the stringers are in relation to the accident and what their path is and who's going to get there first. And it's kind of exciting to watch that and see some of the things they're going through. It's not a perfect series by any means. I think we're 4 episodes in at this point. But if you liked Nightcrawler, or if you're looking for something interesting to watch on Netflix, this is a documentary series following real people. So, bear that in mind, but definitely interesting. Jim, would you agree it's worth checking out?
Yeah, definitely. I guess to summarize, I would say it's kind of like Cops, but from the media on the street perspective. I mean, these guys have it down to a science. There's these small companies that are out there on the streets of LA every single night, and they listen to radios and they just try to be as quick as they can to the scene to get the scoop and sell it to the stations. And it's made me want to learn more about it. I don't have any desire to do it, but I'd like to learn more about how they actually sell the stories.
Jim, are we going to get a police radio? That's my question.
No, I've had them before. They're fine. In Tucson, I'm not sure it'd be worth it. Maybe in LA.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Anyway. In any event, check out Shot in the Dark on Netflix. Will, what have you got this week?
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about a movie that is out on streaming right now. You can rent it on Amazon Video for like $3.99 or whatever the rental costs are. It's this movie called Columbus, and it's a wonderful little movie that I think will resonate with some members of our audience, not with everyone. It's not a movie for everyone, and that's okay. It's about this guy played by John Cho. His father is this like famous architect, just like he's kind of known all over, gives these speeches, and he's giving a speech in Columbus, Indiana, and he gets sick and goes into a coma. So John Cho comes to visit him, and he's had a rocky relationship with his father. There he meets this young girl, like I'm talking like right out of high school, maybe 19 years old, played by Haley Lou Richardson. She is one of the students of the architect father. She wants to leave Columbus, but she can't because her mother's like a recovering addict. So you've got these two people who are dealing with their parent issues and also kind of their relationship with this town, and also their love/distrust of architecture. This is a really neat little movie that runs sort of like a Linklater movie. It's a lot of just 2 or 3 people just talking. It's a very conversational piece, but the conversations are good. But whereas Linklater is more interested in kind of dynamic, kinetic conversations where people kind of walk and talk, this film finds a lot of the really impressive architecture of Columbus, Indiana, and frames the conversations with that architecture as kind of monolithic in the background or kind of weaved into like whatever the framing is. Beautifully shot film, one of the most beautifully shot films of the year, with great characters and beautiful dialogue. No explosions, no car chases. It's just characters opening up to one another. But it's called Columbus. It's absolutely gorgeous, both in terms of story and visuals. You should definitely check it out.
I was wondering about that one, Will. I'm definitely interested. As soon as you mentioned Linklater, I'm like, I'm on it.
Yeah, I think you would dig it, especially like, you know, like if you like the before, like if you can get down with like the before stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think you can get down with this.
Awesome.
All right. Excellent. Well, definitely we'll have to check that out. Jim, I know we're kind of running a little long on time, but we got time. Did you have a plug this week?
Man, the only thing I can really plug this week, and I don't know how I feel about plugging this even, but one of the guys I follow on Twitter is another film critic. David Ehrlich puts out his best 25 films of the year, and he does it in a video format. It's like a 5 or 6 minute video of clips from his picks for the top 25 movies this year. It's set to music. It's not narrated or anything like that, but it does count down the movies. It's beautiful. I look forward to it every year. He's got some great movies on there, ones that we've talked about on the show. Spoiler, Three Billboards, I believe, is on there. But I would check it out. It's just look up David Ehrlich's top 25 2017. So there you go. That's my quick plug.
I love it. I enjoy watching those videos every year as well. So Jim,
just came out this week.
I'm sure you've already watched it, but I'll have to check it out on my end. Maybe you can put a link in the show notes even.
Sure. Maybe I will.
It's a great annual tradition. Like, yeah, he puts it out through the IndieWire site, so you can also find it there. If you're like afterwards going like, how do I spell Ehrlich? Which it's fine. You know, you can check IndieWire's site and they'll have it there.
Excellent. Thanks, Will. Hello.
Hey, sorry, I'm having a little bit of an audio issue. Apparently, the joys.
Well, everybody, that was a great show. We'll see you later.
Yeah, it's freaking out on me a little bit, so I can't hear you guys.
Oh wow,
you can hear me.
Oh, we can definitely hear you. I will type that. We can hear you. There we go.
If you really can't hear us, you want me to take us out? I guess I'll try to take us out. We can hear you, so.
All right, well, guys, it appears from the chat like we are at an end. We are done with the show. My sound just came back, I think. Say something real quick, guys.
Yeah, can you hear us? I don't know.
We can hear you, but it sounds like you're in a well
I
that's
can't
inside of
hear you.
another
All
well.
right. Jim, I'm going to throw it over to you. Go ahead and take us out if you don't mind, and I'll try to figure out what the hell is going on with my.
Well, sorry with the audio issues, but you can find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. That's all one word. And also find me on Facebook at Jim Pugliafco. Will, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook. Just send me a note first. I'm William Lindis there, but if you're a rando, I won't necessarily know that you're coming from the show. So send me a message. Check me out on Letterboxd. I review all of the movies that I've seen throughout the year. I'm coming up on 400 films watched this year. I'm trying to figure out. I want a really good one for number 400. So I don't want to accidentally fuck up and it just be like Daddy's Home 2 or something like that. So I need to choose wisely there. But yeah, come check out any of the movies that I've watched and reviewed. You can find them on Letterboxd. Just look for me as William Lindis.
Awesome. Will, obviously your 400th film needs to be Bad Moms Christmas.
If I do that, and I'm not discounting that, I still haven't seen the first Bad Moms. Like I've heard people said it was pretty good. I that one fell through my crack. So
yeah, it fell through your crack.
It fell right through my crack. Yeah, it was. I coin slotted that film.
Oh goodness. Well, we haven't seen either film either, but so many people are saying it like is super funny. So take that for what you will.
You know what I can do? I haven't seen the Emoji Movie yet. Maybe I'll just make that my 400th movie.
Oh God. Don't do that to yourself, Will. Don't do it.
Right?
Oh goodness. Well, in any event, you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. If you're watching the feed, you can see it in my little on-screen overlay thingy. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one who has bear and chub friends in common with you typically. Feel free to say hi first. Send me a message. Guys, as always, this has been a total blast. So glad we get a chance to come together and talk movies like this. Cannot wait until next week. And also, too, guys, we haven't really been talking about this, but our anniversary is coming up right in line with our Star Wars review. How many years is that for us now? Is this our 5th anniversary?
It's going to be 5th or 4th.
We started in 2012, so 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 5 year.
Whoa!
5 years. Oh my God. I can't believe we've almost been doing this for 5 years, guys. That's crazy.
Oh,
holy moly.
That is
all
crazy.
Right. Well, we're going to have to get some plans going.
Yeah. We'll do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
We'll have a cavalcade of special guest stars maybe to join us. We'll see. But if you have ideas on how we could maybe help celebrate our big 5 anniversary, let us know. Guys, that's it for the Movie Bears podcast this week. Be sure to check out previous episodes at moviebearspodcast.com. You can also find them in iTunes. And guys, you should know I've officially submitted our podcast to Spotify. So fingers crossed, everything goes through and we will soon be on Spotify. So all of you Android folks who don't like the Apple podcast ecosystem, hopefully you'll be able to find and access the show that way very soon. Big shout out to everyone who's been hanging out with us in the chat tonight. Definitely love having you guys with us, Jamie and Bobby and Steve and my Romper Room Magic Mirror. Actually, you know what I'm going to do?
We're getting you one, I'm telling you.
I don't have a Romper Room Magic Mirror, but I do have the Sword of Omens. Give me sight beyond sight. I could use that.
I see Steve and Jamie.
And now we must bring them all together.
You have the power, Rob.
Thunder. Thunder Movie Bears.
Are we like Voltroning our live studio audience? Because if so, I'm really interested in seeing what they all transform into. I have a theory it would be very attractive.
Voltroning? I don't know what you're talking about, Will. There's no Voltron here.
What could that possibly mean? As you hold up your little Voltron toy.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.